We are so blessed on this episode of Burnout to Brilliance because today we have the story from someone who teaches storytelling, which is super exciting. And I'm so excited for all of you to share the wisdom and knowledge from our guest today, which is Cyndi Zaweski. So, Cyndi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, so excited we could connected because we actually connected on Threads of all places, which is such a random place to connect, I feel.
Yeah, it's a new place, but I love the atmosphere there. I think there's a lot of collaboration going on and a lot of real, genuine conversation. So it's been a fun platform to be on.
It's really interesting Threads because I find that it feels a little bit more authentic than actual Instagram, even though they're both connected with each other and they're both owned by Instagram. It's very interesting. What are you finding over there?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think that people are using it maybe a little bit more in the moment and they're sharing more of their personalities and the stories of their day. Certainly, there's educational content there, and I think that that's great. But I think really what's happening there is you're seeing people just share slice of life, moments from their day, get to know the business owner, the person behind the brand in a fun, less curated way that you would see on Instagram.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, where it's like, I'm using threads and, oh, okay, I've got a spare minute. Let me just put a thought out into the world and not overthink it. I think that's why maybe it feels so authentic because you're just talking. You're not thinking, what do I need to do? How can I get a sale? What should I like? It's not an overthought process, it feels a lot more spur of the moment and natural.
Yeah, I think that you're definitely like you're hitting the nail on the head there. I think that's exactly what it is. And I played around with like I've scheduled some stuff there. I'll always try to post some educational content there for the brand, but so much of the connections there are always just from like this is what's going on in my day and here's something my husband said to me and I heard this on a podcast earlier and I love that. I love that vibe.
Absolutely. So, enough about social media platforms. Let's get into you. So, when we do our guest podcast, we always go through my 4R formula and I rejig it a little bit for the podcast, but that formula is reflect, redefine, redesign, and realign. So let's start with the reflecting on you. So can you tell me, and anyone who's listening who isn't familiar with you and your work, can you tell us who is Cyndi?
Sure. So I am Cyndi Zaweski. I am the owner of StoryCraft with Cyndi, and I help business owners tell their story so they can inspire action in their audience and reach people through genuine connections so it doesn't feel salesy or awkward to do your digital marketing. And you can put your message out there in a way that gets people to take action and feels really good to share.
Oh, amazing, amazing. And I know just off air, we had a little bit of a catch up real quick, and you were telling me about your journalism background. You've got a bit of a journalism background, you've been an editor. Can you tell us a little bit about before you're currently doing what you're doing? What did you do in a past life?
So yeah, in my past life, well, I've always been a professional storyteller and I started as a journalist. I was a television journalist for NBC and I also was a business correspondent and I worked for newspapers and I worked for magazines and I was an editor of a magazine and that's where I ended my corporate career before getting into marketing and I did a lot of consulting with New York City agencies, ad agencies, and marketing agencies. And eventually I formed my own business, stopped freelance consulting, and became the CEO of my company. Just seeing what's out there in the market and really helping women like me tell their story and grow online in a way that feels genuine. And I have a degree from Columbia in marketing, and I know all of the straight and traditional ways of doing marketing. And I always found that translating that stuff to a brand that you're building online that's for you when you're the face of your brand and you just want to connect with people and help people with the thing that you love to do, it doesn't translate so smoothly as a one-for-one thing. So learning how to basically apply all those best practices from marketing, but really leaning on the storytelling that I did as a journalist for over a decade and combining them both to make it feel really good to show up and feel authentic. I know that's such a buzzword now, but when you can tell your stories and explain what you do and why you do it the way you do it and who you help, it transcends that traditional kind of gimmicky marketing that you see online and all of those silly little tactics that we kind of roll our eyes at and can make us feel a little awkward, right? So being
Mhm.
able to pass that and really use storytelling and best practices in digital marketing to grow a brand is something that I've done for myself. And I love being able to help other people do that too, because I could just see how much more relaxed people feel when they're telling stories rather than trying to come up with a hook or a CTA or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing about stories as well is that it helps us make sense of things, right? So we can tell a story in a positive light or in a negative light, but we get to own that story regardless of how we paint it. And so I think that storytelling piece, whether you're a business owner and an entrepreneur, whether you're in a career, or whether you're just listening to this podcast because you love personal development, I think knowing how to look at your life, look at your story, and define it in a way that you get to own, that you get to see through your lens is so powerful. And then to be able to share that with others, whether you choose to or not, whether you choose to do it on your social media and through your messaging, if you're a business owner, or whether it's just your friends and family of like, yeah, I went through some shit and I've come out the other side and this is my story and I'm going to own it. I think hugely powerful, regardless of what atmosphere you're using it in, which is really good for us to start with you. So the next point is on our redefine. So the redefine, this point, I'd love to ask you for yourself in your career or in your life, what was a redefining moment that made you kind of go, oh my gosh, like I cannot keep going down this path. I need to change or I need to pivot. What's something that's happened for you that redefined the way you look at life and career?
So I started my business back in 2020 and I had good problems. I had a really good reputation as a journalist and working for the agencies in New York City and doing marketing there. So I actually had clientele before I started my business. So I was really lucky when I started. And just coming from a content background and a storytelling background, I was good at content and I knew how to share online. So I grew very fast and I always had a really great clientele. And I kind of unexpectedly started an agency. I think like most women, like you want to help people, right? And when people reach out for help, you want to help. So what I did was I started a marketing agency because I wanted to help as many people as I possibly could. And and it went really well and I loved my clients. And at the beginning of this year, 2024, my highest paying client just ghosted us. And I have to be honest with you, I didn't care. Like, I was
Mm,
like relieved. I was like, thank God. I was so overwhelmed. And the business just kind of felt like a hamster wheel and like keeping up with my content for my business and managing my team and working on the client's content. It really was so much more overwhelming than even my 9 to 5 job ever was. And it just got to the point where I loved my clients and I loved helping them, but I really felt like I had lost myself. I felt like I wasn't doing the writing that I wanted to do. I wasn't the writer who I wanted to be. And this agency, even though it was so amazing, and it's incredibly hard to walk away from something that is a good thing. But I just had to. As soon the client had left, and um, just a couple weeks after that, I found out I needed surgery, and it was just like this 1-2 punch of like, okay, something has to change. And I was really lucky again because I had an associate content person who was helping me with all the clients. So she was basically able to step in, and I just stopped everything for 2 months. I stopped everything.
Mm,
And what it wasn't I couldn't go on the way I was going on. And what I realize now is that that was my body shutting down. That was me going
mm,
into shutdown mode after many years of being stuck in a fight and flight response, that my body had just completely given out. And I was in bed for 2 months. I barely got out of bed for 2 months. And I was really struggling with depression and like wanting to I just thought that passion was completely gone from my life, and I was feeling so hopeless. And I had this really pivotal moment when I was talking to a therapist, and I was kind of telling her about how awful everything was and how awful I was and how bad I felt, because I felt like, well, I had this successful agency, and everything looks great on paper. I'm doing all the things that they said I should do. And I have, the 6-figure business, and my Instagram is growing and everything is great. Like, why am I so sad? And I was feeling really guilty about it. And she goes, you could look at it that way. Or you could look at it as you're a person who really loves what you do, and you're trying really hard. And you know what? You found out what didn't work for you. And like in that moment, that reframe changed the course of my life. And it
mm.
was such a powerful moment to realize not only the stories that you could tell online to, talk about yourself and your products and find your people, but really the stories that you tell yourself. And that was the beginning of this journey back in March. And from there, I was able to really see my life from a higher perspective. And from that perspective, I could see how many things in my life needed to go away. I had to walk away from a very successful business that I built, and I ended up rebranding and really stepping into my role as a writer, really owning my position as the CEO and founder and face of my brand, and telling stories and being able to show up exactly the way I wanted to show up online, and all my creativity came back. And that's really where everything changed, and how I've gotten to where I am now. And I can go into details about like all the things, but you let me know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think this leads really well into the next part, which is redesign, because and again, this is we're so Cyndi and I are recording this, just to give a little bit of like background at the end of 2024, even though this is 2025 when our beautiful listeners are listening to this. But I in on this podcast, I've shared that I had very big things I had to let go of as well this year. A second business that didn't work out, a business partnership that didn't work out, had to let go of my house, went through an awful separation, like lots of ego things to let go of as well, of like, I don't want to let this thing go, but it's out of my hands kind of thing. Or I could keep fighting and exhaust myself. And I think I would love to hear, because I always tell people burnout and anxiety are the messengers that something is not working. And you can either push through the burnout and anxiety or try to medicate it away or meditate it away or however you want to do. But it is there for a reason. It's telling you, your body, like you said, it is telling you we're not okay. Things are not okay. And something's got to give, something's got to change. And I'm so love that you went to a therapist and did some work there. I guess what I'm wondering is it is a huge thing to have something that it is traditionally so successful, like all the work, time, money, effort to build that business, that sunk cost fallacy we talk about of, spending 4 years building this thing only to go, actually, it's not working for me and I've got to let it go. I want to hear, how did you rip that band-aid off and do that and start redesigning your life towards the writer that you want to be? Because even saying that out loud, I have a little bit of a lump in my throat of like, girl, how did you do that? Because that would have taken so much strength and courage.
Well, it certainly didn't happen overnight, but I really did make that decision almost instantly in that moment when I was in that therapist office that like clearly something needed to change and I wanted to do what I was passionate about. And I even at that time, I didn't even really know what that was. I always thought it was writing, but at that moment when I was in burnout, nothing felt like passion. Everything felt like a struggle. Um, and what I did was the first thing I really did was I just edited my life ruthlessly. And I just looked at everything that was there and I was like, what has to go? What has to go? And, it was things large and small, and these things didn't happen overnight. But there were other things too, like the way that I was speaking to myself. It was atrocious, atrocious. Like you wouldn't talk to your enemy the way I talk to myself. It was like
Mm.
it was rough, right? But like those are like those like mindsets that you can get into and you could really spin yourself into circles. So learning how to talk to myself was a huge thing. So like doing that and taking things that I just didn't want to do anymore. Like I stopped posting on Instagram for 2 months. I just stopped because I didn't feel that creativity anymore. And I really needed to it was the hardest thing for me to learn how to rest. But that's what I had to do. And it was a bit extreme in my case. Like I really did as much as I could to stop as much as I could so I could regain my strength. But what I did with the agency, we didn't just close it down or anything. And like I said, I did have a really wonderful associate who helped me through it. But what we did was we started phasing it out. I just like as client contracts were ending, we weren't renewing. I stopped taking any new clients, and I did a few. I did a few like one-off like copywriting projects, like websites and things like that, and I banked all that money. So by by August, I was done with the agency and I had saved some
Mm.
money and I was able to focus on what actually did matter. So by taking inventory of my life, getting rid of those things that weren't working, I was able to realize I really want to be a writer. I really want to help people tell their story. And the best way for me to do that is to create a course that I'm really passionate about. And I had tried to make courses before, but it was always like, oh, I'm going to have to do it on a weekend, or I have one day a week to work on it, or at night. And I didn't want to create something so special to me and try to cram it in on those in between times. So I worked really hard over the summer. I took those 2 months. I recovered, and I worked really hard over the summer, saved that money, and I took off August, September, and October and November, and I made that course. I poured my heart and all my energy into it to be able to do that, and I launched it, and it did really well. It's still doing really well, and people are loving being able to tell their story. And I just feel like I would not have been able to do that had I not really taken a look at my life and taken that inventory and really reframed my story the way that my therapist said. So I could just take an honest look about what is not working and not feeling like a failure about it, but just being honest of like, if my life continues like this, am I going to be happy in another 6 months? And for me, that answer was definitely no. It was obvious that if I continued going the way I was going, things were going to get a lot worse. And I couldn't even imagine what worse looked like at that point in time. So I had to take those things off my plate. I really had to change my mindsets. And that's what happened. I was able to really pour myself into something that I loved, and it reignited that passion, and that passion shines through. And it was a long road and nothing is guaranteed at the end, but it truly taught me that when you slow down, when you listen to yourself and you take that time to cultivate that in you, the results are incredible. The results, not only are you feeling good in your business, but you're able to show up exactly the way you want to for your people, and you're really able to make those changes in your life.
Yeah, and I love this so much because I think a trend that I'm going to see in 2025 for sure is a lot of people pivoting their career and their business because I have seen burnout go up and up and up. And like everything you're saying is just spot on. I just love this where burnout is that opportunity for you to rest and in that rest reflect what has been working, almost like that life audit you're talking about. Okay, let's look. What's working? What's not? What do I need to declutter in my life? Who are the people that just do not make me feel good? What are the things that make me feel good and don't make me feel good? Again, all the habits that if I stacked all of the things I'm doing in 6 months from now, if I keep doing this, where am I going to be? In 6 months from now, if I keep doing this, where am I going to be? So I just love your story, so much because I think so many of us can relate to this. And I think in 2025, the portfolio career is going to be big for this reason of, okay, I've got a couple of things working here, but I'm pulled towards this passion. Or when I really tune in, I'm pulled to writing, or I'm pulled to music, or I'm pulled to art. Like, what are these other aspects that I can explore? And sometimes we'll explore things and go, yep, that's the thing. That is what my heart is. And sometimes we'll explore something and go, actually, I love this as a hobby, or I still love this, but this is not the thing that I want to make money from or monetize or whatever. So I think your story and the way that you do that is really powerful. Before we move on, well, I guess actually it's a good segue to our last area, which is the realign of the things that you do now to hold the path, to keep on track, because I think change is amazing, but it happens really fast and it can be really easy to fall back into old ways of talking to yourself, old ways of thinking, or going, maybe if it's a lower cash month for whatever reason, going, actually, you know what? That other thing did work and it did make me money. Maybe I should go back to that. So I would love to hear one, what are the things that you specifically say to yourself? Because I know that you said that was a big thing of like, I had to learn how to talk to myself better. And B, yeah, how do you stay the course now? How do you stay realigned in this bigger, better version of you?
Well, that is such a great question, and it's a lot of small things. It's a lot of small things. I think waking up every day, and I don't think it has to be like I don't think I have like the perfect morning routine or whatever, because really, what the big lesson I learned is that happiness is a habit, and it starts with intentionally bringing in things to your life that make you happy. So for me, that means absolutely not being on my phone first thing in the morning. Absolutely not. Like for the first hour of the day, like not scrolling any social media. There's some science behind it and about how it messes with your dopamine for the day. And it really makes it hard for you to like, just find genuine happiness in everyday moments because of, all the stuff that we find on our screen. So staying off the phone, I do a mindfulness meditation for about 10 minutes. And that, again, like that is just something that helps me separate thoughts from who I am, because talking to yourself and being able to almost coach yourself through the day, especially in the beginning, if you're used to kind of like
Mhm.
being down on yourself and not giving yourself credit and not celebrating your wins, all of that stuff was so foreign to me in the beginning that I really had to go out of my way to coach myself through it and catch myself doing it. But those mindfulness meditations really help because it just separates me from the thought. It's like, I am not anxious. I am having anxiety. And really, it's not really a practice to get enlightened, but it's really a practice to start catching those moments and notice how you're talking to yourself so you could get familiar with yourself. The more aware you are with yourself of yourself and who you are, the better you can get your needs met. And when you get your needs met, you will thrive. You can trust yourself and you will you will be able to do more than you think is possible when you can name your needs. And once you're able to name your needs, then you're more resourceful than you think. You can get your needs filled once you know how to voice them. So that's what that meditation is all about, separating myself from thoughts and really tuning in to what I need. I'll put my feet in the grass every morning, like get some actual outside time is so important to me. Um, I do some journaling every morning and things like that. I always try to focus on my gratitude. They say gratitude is really the the way to be content in life. And I'm that's what I strive for. Like I strive to be content and happy in every moment, no matter the circumstances. And one of the ways I do that, especially with talking to myself, is like I have this thing where I'll be like brain boundary, like something will happen and I'll and I'll get like really self-critical, or I'll just like oh, you're an idiot, whatever. And then now that I've practiced, it'll just go, wait, brain boundary. Like, and I just won't go there. I'll just be like, brain boundary, we're not going down that road.
Mhm.
And then I could stop that spiral before it starts.
Yeah, amazing. And we in therapy we often teach our clients exactly that, that you are not your thoughts. You can separate it. And once you have that practice of I'm noticing I'm having the thought that I'm feeling anxious or this makes me uncomfortable, you can separate it, but you can catch yourself, right? You can actually go, okay, yep, I know I'm going into this old pattern and I can catch it before, like you say, it's like that stone rolling down the hill. Once it's got some momentum, it's hard to stop. So, but if you can catch it early, that's good. And I guess my one of my final questions before we start to kind of come to an end is I think a lot of my listeners, myself included, and a lot of the women that I work with, and it sounds like yourself as well, they really are high achievers. They identify with that. And so, for a lot of the high achieving women I know, their natural stress response is to throw themselves into work. Okay, work's stressing me out, but what makes me feel better when I'm stressed? More work, more productivity, more. And it's this when I start working with a lot of business owners or women with not just the business strategy, but the mindset stuff, it's around how can we slow down when you're not working, you know, and realizing you can still get everything you need to done, but in a more calm and regulated way. How did you make that shift? Because for a lot of people, it feels really uncomfortable and unnatural in the beginning. So, how did you find that? Because I love the practices that you have. It sounds like you've slowed down a bit.
I have slowed down a bit, and it was incredibly uncomfortable in the beginning. Incredibly uncomfortable. Like I exact for all those reasons, because I've always been a big achiever. I've always had, high level jobs, high pressure jobs. And when you're learning to rest for the first time, it can feel really awkward. And especially if you're a high achiever and a perfectionist, you're going to get that voice that's like, you're lazy, you didn't do anything today. And it's one of those things that you're so right. Like when you are rested, you could get a million things done in flow that would take you 4 days if you were frazzled and burnt out and completely dysregulated, right? But if you've never experienced it, it's very hard to believe. It's like it almost doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense to me when I started. Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm going to be able to get more done when I'm rested? Like, it almost didn't click, if I'm being completely honest. And, giving yourself that time to slow down. And I know that like we hear so much about like the breathing exercises and all those things. And it's very hard to remember in the moment when you are really stressed out, but that's the practice. Like that's what it is. It really is a practice, and you just learn to get better at it, and you get better at it, and you get better at it. Because learning how to rest was the most difficult thing for me, and learning what kind of rest you need. Like, is it the kind of rest where you need to sit down on the couch and cuddle with your husband and watch some movies? Is it the kind of rest where you need to, go for a walk outside, clear your mind? Is it the kind of rest where you want to go get your nails done? Or, just being able to, again, like it comes back so much to being able to identify your needs. And that's why, especially when you're burnt out in the beginning, slowing down, because you've denied your needs for so long. When you're that burnt out,
Hmm.
uh, you've denied yourself for so long, you don't even know what you need. And so much of the process of recovering from that and building a life and a business that you love, and that all of that really comes from slowing down and getting to know yourself, like really understanding who you are and what you need. And I promise, like, as soon as you can start identifying those things, like what you really need, you will thrive. It's just going to take, it's frustrating, especially for high achievers. And yes, you want to rush. And I get that. Like, so it was painful for me. Such a strange year for me, 2024, because it was like the slowest I've ever gone. And it was a real learning curve, but now I'm flying and I feel good doing it. Now things are just falling into place. And you know what? I'll try to tell you something that quickly that my therapist told me, because it was so helpful. When you're burnout and when you're high achiever and you slow down, like you almost get afraid to start adding things to your plate. Like you're almost like you'll give it yourself anxiety, or almost, or you'll procrastinate on things because you like subconsciously don't want to put yourself back in that position. So learning to get through that discomfort little by little, making sure that you're getting your needs met every single day and you're the one showing up and giving you, even if it's just a little bit, even if it's just reading one page of a book that you like, even if it's just turning on that song and dancing for a little bit, putting your feet in the grass for like 5 minutes, like whatever it is to get your needs met, like that's you're going to rebuild trust with your body. And like you said, you're going to get into that flow state and things are going to start clicking, and you'll know how to take care of yourself and you'll be able to expand your capacity and things will feel so much better. I think that is really the thing to know about burnout.
Yeah, exactly. And I think exactly that. Like, that's why this is called Burnout to Brilliance, because it's like if you use burnout correctly as the messenger that it is, you can actually tap into your most brilliant self, which it sounds like you've done. But it wasn't easy. It's not to say, oh, you just, rest and then you're going to find your passion and then it's all going to work out. Like you say, there's a lot of discomfort. You have to engage with a therapist sometimes. You have to ask yourself what you need and then give it to yourself and accept it without the guilt of, oh, like, even for myself at the moment, it's like, do I take another meeting or do I take care of my health? Work out. It's always so easy, again, as a high achiever, to take another meeting, do another podcast, do another this. Or am I going to be really strict around these are the needs that I need met, and I'm going to have more impact when I do say yes? So I have absolutely loved this chat, Cyndi. I think so many are going to get so much out of you sharing your story. But of course, there's more to this. So if people want to connect with you, find you, check out everything that you do and who you are, where can they find you?
Well, yeah, and thank you so much for having me. It's always such an honor to share my story. Hearing other people's stories when I was going through burnout and hearing how people overcame it and started figuring out was so important for me on my journey. And that's what I do, why I do what I do, so I could help other people share their stories and have that ripple effect and have it touch other people with their expertise and their experiences. So if you're looking to tell your story, especially entrepreneurs, you can find me at cindyzaweski.com. I'm also at Cyndi Zaweski on Instagram and all social media platforms.
Amazing. Well, I absolutely loved this. I know so many people are going to get out of it. There were so many golden nuggets. I don't know, for people who are watching the video, you might see me like writing frantically these little notes about all the things that you were dropping. But thank you again for being here, Cyndi. And for everyone who's watching or listening, have a wonderful day, wonderful week. And I will see you in the next episode of Burnout to Brilliance.